And now, a three-time sports editor, former online and managing editor, and host of Talk That Talk, award-winning journalist Terrell Chatterbox Emerson.
Welcome to it. Welcome to it. It is 3 o'clock on a Monday afternoon, so you guys know what time it is. It is time for Talk That Talk. I am your host, Terrell Chatterbox Emerson, and we'll get to the logistics in a second in terms of YouTube and Apple Podcasts and Spotify and everything else. But this is your Monday installment of the Talk That Talk radio show. Haven't had him here for a couple of weeks, but Will Dest, part of the Sporting Tribune, is back in the building with us. Will, what's going on, gang?
Chilling. I'm good to be back.
Dog.
Spent some time relaxing for the holidays.
I would hope so, man. You went back home. I told you when you went back home. And for those who don't know, and let's just say it's somebody's first time listening to the show, where are you from, Will?
I'm from a town called Averill Park, New York, which is like 15 minutes away from Albany. And it's like a bunch of lakes. So it's kind of like in the 1800s, it was like a vacation town. And it'd be like the presidents would come up and like the governors and stuff.
Okay, you didn't tell me that part.
Now it's not that. Now it's like what you would imagine a town like that in the 1800s would be in 2025. It's just all washed up.
I told you for a fact. You sent me this picture. I told you I needed it. I said I need to know what your Christmas looks like when you get back home. You sent me the picture, and I said I'm coming down.
We had a little bit of snow. We had a little bit of snow, but then you don't see what like the rest of America doesn't see that doesn't have snow. When the snow melts or when the snow gets dirty after it falls the first day, it looks horrible. So 90% of winter, the landscape just looks terrible. But you do get those days like when I first got home that first day where it's just a fresh snow and it does look pretty sick.
First of all, as a person who's from California, and obviously I don't get snow like that, it's all fire to me. Like it's all super dope to me. But yeah, man, let's get to it. Again, guys, it is your Monday installment of the Talk That Talk radio show. I am your host, Terrell Chatterbox Emerson. Will Dest, part of the Sporting Tribune, is in the building with me. We got 2 hours of good sports talk for you guys. And I keep prefacing it by saying good sports talk. Well, we got a lot to talk about, dog. We have a lot.
Busy week. And a lot of things we thought that were going to happen probably did happen.
Yeah, for the most part, I guess. We'll see how it goes. But if you guys want to watch our YouTube, all you have to do is go to YouTube rather. Go to the search bar, type in Talk That Talk radio show. Once again, if you want to go ahead and tune in to the live stream, go to YouTube, go to search bar, type in Talk That Talk radio show. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can never miss any show that we have going. This is episode 3 of season 7. So let's give us a round of applause for that. Season 7, man. This is episode 329 of the Talk That Talk radio show. So episode 329 of the Talk That Talk radio show. I got some people in the chat right now that's actually talking about kind of giving us some topics to talk about. We're going to talk about the coaching carousel in the NFL, obviously. So the newest name that's been added to that is Mike McCarthy, who was relieved of his duties today from the Dallas Cowboys. We could talk about dumpster fires all you want, but I don't think the one in Dallas gets talked about enough. But let's go ahead and get started, man. If you guys would like to follow us on all of our social media, I'm talking Facebook, I'm talking Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. All you have to do is go to those platforms, go to the search bar, type in Talk That Talk radio show. It will pop right up. The one thing that will be different is our Twitter. Our Twitter is at Talk That Talk LV. And once again, guys, this radio show is a byproduct of the Talk That Talk Media Company. We are in year 5 of this company? I think year 5 of this company, year 6. So
killing it.
We definitely have some. Let's do one more, right? We definitely have some things that we want to check off this year. We got some good people behind us. So let's go ahead and get to it. And of course, before we do that, you're looking at some pictures behind Will. You can kind of see the padding behind me. This show is shot from the Harry Reid Research and Technology Park here on Sunset, here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I feel like we got our morning announcements out the way. Well, I don't know about you, brother. And this is the funny thing, guys. I tell you guys all the time, I do this show with people that, first of all, I like. A lot of people do radio shows and do shows and podcasts with people that they don't like. But I do shows with people that I like to feel are very well versed in what we're gonna speak about. Now, there are some people that come on, myself included, in the past, right, where I'll be like, guys, I'm not the biggest hockey guy, and we'll lean towards a different topic, right? Will is one of those guys. I never tell him what's on the rundown.
He's right. I come in here blind, and I love it because I just want to spitball when I get in here.
And honestly, I think that's the best way to do a show. And for whatever reason, just the feedback that I get from our particular shows, people like it that way. So as long as that's going to be a thing, then I'm cool with it. I have no issues with it. So let's go ahead and get to it, man. Can you guess what we're gonna start with? If you had to take a wild,
If I had to take a wild guess, I would go Antonio Pierce.
Interesting, because I'm gonna switch it up today, and I'm starting with some UNLV basketball news.
That probably would have been second because they're. Don't even get me going. I mean, get me going, but I'll let you go first.
So how about this? How about we start with some good news? Can we do that first?
Sure.
And I'm not trying to be one of those guys, but if we're talking good news in terms of UNLV basketball, we're talking about the Lady Rebels. The Lady Rebels. First of all, Lindy has this thing where when I'm doing my interviews with her, she'll be like, "I didn't even know that stat," like until you said it. I'm doing my numbers last night. I'm looking. I covered a game or whatever, and I'm sitting back and I'm looking, and I'm like, you know what? This number can't be real. And I go back and I go back and I go back and I'm punching numbers. UNLV has 49 conference wins in their last 50 outings. I thought it was a joke. I read the number. I added up the numbers and said, this can't be real. I had to text Lindy after the interview and was like, yo, I didn't tell you this, but this number is kind of insane.
It's absolutely insane. And I mean, it makes sense. You obviously have the New Mexico game, I think it was last year, where they slipped up in conference play.
Yep.
But other than that, I mean, they've been perfect. And obviously, the Mountain West isn't the strongest conference of women's basketball. It's definitely not what it is in men's basketball. But still, to go basically unbeaten in conference play every year except last year. And remember, she was hired around the same time Kevin Kruger was, so you can see where both those ships are heading. It's remarkable. And it's not something that was precedented before. Like, she didn't come in and take in a dominant program. Like, she built it not from the ground up, but enough to where she's the force behind it. So, yeah, kudos to her.
No, you're absolutely right. And you kind of just talked about it, right? And ironically enough, for them to pick up this 49th win in their last 50 conference outings, they played New Mexico. And they played them in the pit. So as I'm doing my research yesterday and I'm prepping for the game, this is their second straight matchup for first place. And when it comes to that, first of all, in recent memory, I feel like every year you can point to a team and you can say this is probably going to be UNLV's biggest test, right? Whether you looked at Wyoming, whether you looked at New Mexico when the Duff twins were there, whether you look at, I know I'm leaving out a huge team, and they're going to be Colorado State with McKenna Hofschild. So there are definitely times where this group has an elephant in the room, right? In terms of where you know that you have to go through. Like you said, this particular year, you didn't really know which one it was. You looked at Boise State, you looked at New Mexico, you looked at Colorado State. UNLV has 3 dubs against those 3 programs.
And obviously that just speaks to how, like, this wasn't supposed to be, excuse me, this wasn't supposed to be the year that they ran through the conference and went undefeated. Obviously using Desiree, like losing the players they lost, I mean, that's tough. And to come back and do it again this year against teams that haven't, like, they weren't just put together this year. Those teams have continuity that UNLV does have, but not as much as they had in past years. So to get where they are now is, again, a testament to Lindy and the programs he's built.
And the interesting thing is about this group. I'm watching the game, right? And it's a 19-19 tie after the first quarter. UNLV is up 7 at halftime. They go into the fourth quarter tied at 58. So I'm on the edge of my couch, dog, like looking at the game, and I'm watching the game. And the funny thing is, no matter what we talk about, I've even kind of messed with Lindy a little bit in terms of the team shooting numbers. Team started 1 for 9 from deep, right? I don't even know if I have the numbers of what they finished with, but they got it together toward the end of the game. I think it was 10 for 27 maybe at the end of the game. And the final percentage looks good. But I kind of asked her the same question that I asked Becky Hammond at one point. How willing are you to ditch that original game plan if you see it's not working? And as she said before, this is where knowing the scout is important. They're going to do one of two things. They're either going to apply pressure or they're going to force us to make open shots. Like she said, I liked every single shot that we took. I don't know how many times we're going to get to Kevin Kruger and his UNLV Rebels in a second, running Rebels in a second. You look at some of these numbers just in terms of the stat book, right? At the end of the game, you look at what the Rebels have, and it's like, how did you guys lose this game? And then you look at the other side of it, right? And that's one thing that Lindy's group continues to kind of implement. You talked about it a second ago with Desi leaving. Where they took over this game was in the fourth quarter. They had a 6-0 run to take a 1-point lead. They ended up turning that into an 11-0 run, which gave them a 6-point lead. That stretch went to 17-0. That was the game. That ultimately decided the game.
And that's a sign of a strong team when you can put it together right at the end. Not just right at the end, right when you need to get it. Like, basketball is a game of runs, obviously, but having a timely run is the object of the game. And again, sign of a strong program, testament to Lindy.
And the funny thing is, too, you talked about Desi. Desi is not somebody that you replace with one single person. They've replaced Desi in several different people. And that's the interesting thing. One of the questions that I asked Lindy about last night was AB, because AB didn't have the best shooting night. And the funny thing is, I haven't talked to her about it, but given how AB is, if I went to Alyssa right now and brought up the last game, especially the offensive end, I know kind of how she would react. She shot 1 of 10 from the field, 0 of 7, I believe, from deep. She was 2 rebounds away from tying her career high. UNLV hops in the 2-3 zone in the fourth quarter. Everything changes. Every rebound, it appeared, was inhaled by AB. And then a couple of things too, really quick. I just want to highlight. I don't think that it was intentional. Well, by default, right? The name of the foul, but I don't necessarily feel like it was purposeful by, I believe her name is Amia Moreland. Maybe it's Amaya Moreland. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, but she plays for New Mexico. She with an elbow, like right in the jaw, right? And Kiera goes to the bench. Referees review it, intentional foul. Shortly thereafter, Amarachi is attempting to box out on the free throw. She gets caught with one. Moreland is disqualified from the game, second intentional foul. I asked Lindy about being in that moment, and this is, I'm gonna be completely honest, this is the biggest test to this group. We know Desi a little bit. Let Desi get caught with an elbow.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Somebody else is gonna catch one just by default. And it was 2 teammates that went down with elbows. Ironically enough, like I said before, it's Kiera Jackson and it's Amarachi Kempson. If you're around this team, those are probably the 2 people that talk the least, just so you guys know. I talked to Lindy about not retaliating in that moment. This team beat you on your home floor last year. You're both fighting for first place this time around. You catch one elbow. All right. You catch another elbow. All right now. And that's what I do think is important about this group. This group is wise beyond their years.
Yeah, and I mean, they've had the continuity to some degree where they have a lot of players returning from last season. Obviously, not Desiree, who was the best player, but I mean, they have pretty much the entire core around her back. And again, we could say it a million times, a coach like Lindy who preaches what she preaches and makes those in-game adjustments. And I mean, you're going to have a team that's not going to lose many games in a conference like the Mountain West.
And you know what's funny? I just realized that I missed my mom's tip-in, right, on the start. And the funny thing is, maybe I should start moving her tip-in to the topic that it fits. Because when I read this tip-in and then I go into the next topic, you're going to be like, I like what you did there. Anyway, Lindy LaRocque's Lady Rebels are 13-4 this season. They're 5-0 in the conference. Lindy talked about it during that phone call with her. They sit atop of the Mountain West. And the only thing that she knows that means is we control our destiny. We keep winning, we get where we want to go. And that's ultimately what she's trying to do, right? I want to go back to that 49-1. I'm going to Twitter. I'm letting you guys know right now. I'm going to my tweet because I want to break it down for a split second. I just said UNLV was 5-0 this season in the conference. UNLV went, then keep in mind, guys, in these last 50 conference outings that I'm talking about, I'm including the conference tournament. So here we are. 5-0 this season so far. 20-1 last season. Their one loss was at home to New Mexico, 69-66, just so you guys know. 2022-23, they were 21-0. Close out 21-22, they won the conference tournament. So that's 3 straight wins. So that's 3-0, 21-0, 20-1, and now 5-0 so far this season. And somebody actually pointed out on Twitter, I think I had it in the Boise State game, UNLV is up to 22 consecutive Mountain West road wins. So the numbers are out of this world. And really quick, I want to read this tweet from Dan Cunningham, from Lindy's husband. 49-1 in the last 50 conference games. Doesn't matter what conference you're in. This is tough.
100%. 100%. And then, I mean, you can wax poetic about how weak the conference is or whatever, but again, 49-1 is 49-1. I mean, look at Gonzaga. 49-1 is 49-1 for Gonzaga, and we don't say anything about that. So,
and the people that do, we don't listen to you anyway. So they're taking that. Well, I shouldn't say taking that, right? But they're bringing that with them as they come back home, back-to-back home games to start, or actually this week, rather. I'm not even going to say to start the week, but back-to-back home games this week. They begin on Wednesday, 6 p.m. from the Cox Pavilion against Air Force. That is going to be a sight to see. Let's get to my mom's tip-in, and then we can slowly migrate over to the next topic. Deal?
Deal.
All right, let's do it. My mom's tip-in. I know you feel like you're talking about me, but you might be talking about some other things as well. You ain't too old to start over. You're too old to keep doing what's not working. I'll read it again. You ain't too old to start over. You're too old to keep doing what isn't working.
That's a bar.
You want to guess where we're going next?
Oh, based off that, Kevin Kruger.
I don't like the way you was like, oh yeah, obviously. So you know what's interesting? In the world of journalism, 95% of the time, I'm not going to tell you who my source is. You're not going to tell me who your source is. In that 95% of the time, based on what you know and based on what I know, we can tell that even if we don't have the same source, they're pretty close. So I have a question for you. Have you heard anything from any of your sources about that hot seat being in flames right now?
Not directly, no, but you can obviously make inferences from where the expectations were before the season compared to what we have now. I would imagine if the seat isn't on fire, there's going to be hell to pay this offseason between the fan base, the boosters. Like, this is a program that is dead. Like, last year you couldn't say it was dead. This year, you can say it's dead. You go to the Thomas and Mack Center for a Saturday afternoon home game. 10 years ago, that arena was filled to the brim. It was a top 25 attendance. Like UNLV had a top 25 attendance of all the teams in the country. There was 38 people in that gym Saturday or 2 weeks ago.
Bro.
Like, it's sad for a program that was among the 10 most historic programs in the history of college basketball not so long ago to be reduced to what it is now. Like, someone really has to like take a deep look in the mirror and like ask themselves what they've done.
I am going to quote something from Kevin Kruger. I think it was I don't know if it was I think it might have been the Colorado State game. Kevin said, "We take a punch and we have a hard time getting up off the mat."
Yeah. I wrote a preview for the UNLV game for Wednesday for Utah State, and I put that quote in because I was like, and in the article, I kind of like went into how he's on the hot seat and how the expectations are not up to par this season. And like that quote to me is just so telling because you're the coach. It's your job to get them to respond when they get punched in the mouth. When you have a fighter in that ring, they're not going to the corner to an empty corner.
If you have a writer in the ring, you might be in trouble.
A fighter. So back to what I was saying. They're not going to an empty corner. These kids on UNLV, when Kruger does call a timeout 3 minutes too late into a rally that's going to cost his team a 20-point win, like whatever game it was last week,
San Jose State,
they're going to an empty corner. Kruger has nothing productive to say. He has nothing productive to draw up. He has no motivation. He's not making the right substitutions at the right time. It's like, I don't want to say a lame duck head coach, but it's about as close to that as you could possibly get.
And you know what's so interesting? Everything that you just said, I actually like pretty much everything that you just said. I remember, was it last season? Might have been last season, where I came in here and was like, Kevin Kruger is not on the hot seat. Like, that's not what I'm hearing, right? I had some people hit me directly after the show and was like, it's hotter than you think.
It was last year.
I said, okay.
It was. And I think what really saved him last year was that stretch at the end of the season where they could say, like, okay, you had like they were going to the Mountain West tournament with a legitimate shot where they felt like they could win. If that wasn't the case, I don't think Kruger would have been back this year because they felt like you and me know, and everyone who follows this program knows, the number one problem with UNLV right now, and like the number one thing this program is looking for is just continuity and a coach that they can trust, that's going to stick around, that's going to build this program to not what it was, maybe what it was in 10 years ago.
Build it towards it at least.
Like, give us something. Give us consistency in the conference play. Give us an NCAA tournament once every 5 years, for Christ's sake. Like, we're not asking for too much. But, I mean, yeah, I lost my train of thought.
No, you're perfectly fine. And matter of fact, this will probably bring you back. The thing with that, what I was told last year, right? Right around the time that I was told it, maybe 2 games after that, I witnessed Kevin almost like throw caution to the wind. And it appeared that he was coaching like some. Remember when we found out that Tony? Were you even out here when Tony Sanchez was here?
Oh.
Okay, damn. So Tony Sanchez, we found out, was relieved of his duties, with 2 games remaining in the regular season. Why would you do that? I don't know. But the move was made, and I watched how the team played the last 2 games, and I was like, something not right. Like, it appears that he threw all caution to the wind. So because I watched the way Kevin, as you mentioned before, that stretch to close out last season, I witnessed Kevin coaching in a way where I was like, in my humble opinion, he got that word too. Because in my opinion, he started to coach from a standpoint of, if I'm going to go, I'm going to go doing it my way on my terms. And it benefited the team. My biggest critique during Kevin Kruger during this run has been in talking to the people that he played with and or against, the words that they use to describe Kevin Kruger as an athlete. I don't know that they would use those same words to describe Kevin Kruger as a player. I mean, as a coach, rather.
Not even close.
So if you're that fiery guy, dog, be that fiery guy.
Be that fiery guy, and don't wait until you're down 20 points at halftime of a non-conference game to give it to me in an interview with Cofield. Give it to your guys in the locker room. Give it after the press conference of when you lose by 32 to Air Force last year. Like and do it for the fans, if anything. These fans do not want to see their head coach going into coachisms and just talking like everything's normal after they lose a game that to an Air Force team or to a team like they have to beat. Nobody wants to see that. After you lose back-to-back games by 20-plus points to Boise State and Colorado State, nobody wants to see Kevin Kruger telling us about how they have to just work harder and get better in practice. Get angry. Get passionate. Be like the guys on Twitter who are going nuts every time you fall behind 30 points. Like, you have to, or your job's going to go up in smoke. And that's, I think, the most damning thing about Kruger this season is we saw how we coached when he had presumably his job on the line at the end of the season last year.
Coached his ass
we
off.
Saw the fire. We saw how quick he was to pull players off a leash. We saw how quick he was to make substitutions and how quick he was to just make general game decisions that he's not making now. It's insane. And, like, I don't know who got in his ear this offseason and said that his job was any safer than it was last year. It's not. And, like, if he's the coach of this basketball team next season, I'm seriously going to have to question, like, some of the leadership in this program, especially when you see what we've done with the football team. You see how they revived the football team in 2 years.
Yeah.
Not even revived it. They created it damn near from the ground up. You don't even need to do that with basketball. You have a historic foundation. You can point to those banners in the rafters that football can't.
Mm-hmm.
You can get money around this town with that basketball team that you can't get with football because these 60-year-old dudes, 70-year-old dudes who not grew up, but were in their primes when that Running Rebel team was in its prime. People want to see that.
As a matter of fact, too, I don't know exactly what. I'll put it this way. I'm not sure if I had the conversation with you on the show or not. I think Mike Hughes was here. He asked me how much NIL money did I believe was tied into UNLV football. And I said, I'm going to give you a number that's kind of off, but I'm going to use it as a basis for this point. And whatever the point was that I used, I referenced it to basketball. You just kind of talked about it. Yes, Vegas has money. Yes, Vegas has money on reserve. Vegas has money on reserve for this UNLV program whenever it gets back to the point that it's going to get back to.
And it's kind of like, you got to show me, right? It's like the chicken has to come before the egg here. They're not going to give that money up if this program shows no willingness to.
They've said it. Behind the scenes, they've said it. Flat out.
Which, again, you point to the point that if Kruger comes back to this team next year, they're like, let's drop off all pretenses. They're not going to go to the NCAA tournament this year. They're not going to make a run in the Mountain West tournament. You can pretty much guarantee that with the way Utah State's playing, with the way Boise's playing.
So I would say this really quick. Since you said that, from what I've heard, in order to preserve his job for next season, got to win the Mountain West tournament.
Yeah, I think that's been the writing on the wall. And obviously, I mean, like you said, we're probably hearing the same things. But, yeah, that Mountain West tournament's not happening. And if you saw you obviously did see it, but if you're an outsider looking in, and you're not really paying attention to this team, they got smoked the last two.
So let's do it. So let's talk about it. Remember earlier this season when I said let's talk about the quality of win versus the magnitude of losses? And I ranked I listed UNLV's wins. And then I listed UNLV's losses. And I said, hell, just take one. Take one from this side. I don't know what everybody else felt like. I watched that Northwestern game and I was like, I don't really feel like they're in it. Right? I watched that Mississippi State game and was like, all right, usually every mid-major team has one of these. Get this out of here. This is one of those. I think back to that Memphis game. I don't think they were going to get Creighton either, considering what happened last year. But that Dayton game, and I think back to that Memphis game, one of those, maybe both of those.
They should have had both, and they really should have had the Memphis game.
That was the one.
I mean, they were up, 9 points in the first half? 9 points at halftime. They were up double digits at times in the first half.
They committed, and I didn't think Penny would do it. They committed everything that they had to stopping DJ. They said anybody else can beat us.
Memphis didn't even play good. Like, even in the second half, it wasn't like
they played 10 good. I don't want to say this is going to sound trash because they won the game. That last 10 minutes decided the game, period.
And how many times have we seen that movie in the Kruger era? where UNLV 30 minutes
go a couple of years ago.
30 minutes, 35 minutes. You saw it more than San Francisco. You probably saw it a few times. I mean, off the top of my head, just like Utah State, how they threw that one away last year.
Fresno State took the lead in the second half after.
That's the game I was referencing. Like when I said like you're just pissing away 30-point leads. They were up 25 points in that game at halftime. The fact that game, and like you're watching this and it's like you're watching a train wreck in slow motion because you know it's going to happen. And you know Kruger's not going to call the timeout. And you know he's not going to make the adjustment he needs to make. So we're all just watching this car wreck. We all have to see how bad it's going to turn out. And we all know how it's going to happen, except presumably the guy who's getting paid over $1 million a year to coach the basketball team.
The unfortunate news about what you just said, right? That 4-game win streak, obviously it's our job to tell the story. Yes, it was a 4-game win streak. I just want to let you guys know that 4-game win streak consisted of a final non-conference win against UC Riverside, which, if I recall correctly, I could go back and look at my notes, but I don't think that was smooth either. So that's number one. It's UC Riverside.
What has been smooth? Even when they win, have they had a win this season that's been like wire to wire comfortable?
Pepperdine.
That's
the first one that comes to mind.
Probably it, right? I mean, Alabama State wasn't like they didn't ever feel like
they had to pull away from game. Omaha.
Yeah, Omaha. That's right.
They had to pull away from them. Didn't they play Stetson this year?
That was last season.
I don't know if it matters. But going back to the 4-game win streak, it was UC Riverside, it was Fresno State, it was Air Force, and it was San Jose State. Obviously, everybody's going to get behind this program that has won 4 straight games. But let's go back to my original point: quality of wins versus magnitude of losses. Let's look at how you guys performed against Boise State. Let's look at how you guys performed against Colorado State. You didn't only lose, you got your doors kicked in.
I'm not even sure people were getting behind them after that 4-game win streak. I think from what I saw,
there's always delusion here in Vegas.
I mean, delusion, but I think fans now, like I see like a resignation out of this fan base that I haven't seen in my time here as far as this basketball team goes. Like UNLV, as the fan base, as you know, delusional. They think UNLV is where it was in the 90s, or they did. Now they don't. Now it's so doom and gloom with this basketball team, and it 100% should be that way. Because, again, look at how empty those stands are. That's really the only thing that matters.
That was the argument that they used against Marvin Menzies. There weren't enough people in the stands.
And if you look at the crowd in the Menzies era compared to what we got now, it's like a joke. It's a complete joke. And it's just so hard to watch because I come here from New York, and I grew up watching these games on my TV 3,000 miles away. And you're like, oh, my God, UNLV, like, that's a pillar. It's a pillar of the sport. It's ashes now.
So you lose this one 84-62, right? And I think I actually tweeted that too. This team, do I have the tweet? I hope I can go find it really quick. I sincerely do. So I hate to be this guy, but sometimes you just want to tweet things matter-of-factly, right? UNLV at halftime against Colorado State was shooting 54% from the field. They were down 11 points. Colorado State was shooting 65.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
And I'm hearing that Rob, not that this should shock anybody, I'm hearing that Rob is done for the year.
I heard that right away. Like, not right away,
we've kind of
a couple weeks ago.
Well, we've kind of been leaning towards it, and even let's just say,
if you're Rob, why come back to this team?
Right? Like, how many other ways can you say it, Rob? Why would you want to join right now anyway? You might want to get a medical, even if you come back to UNLV next year, you might want to get a medical red shirt and get a full season to try to get into game shape. 5 games into conference season, you're better off to just sit at home.
You're expecting a lot out of Rob if you even expect him to come back to this team next year after you tell him he's coming off the bench this season with this lackluster transfer class you brought in. Seriously. Like,
I think there's going to be a lot of turnover next season, especially if Kruger is gone.
There has to be. There can't just be a lot of turnover. There has to be complete turnover. It has to be like even DJ. I don't even think I don't think he'll transfer. Maybe he'll just go right to the league. Maybe he will transfer. But I have a hard time imagining DJ coming back next year.
Everybody yelled at me this offseason about reporting what I reported. And I know some of the phone calls that were made that day when that was tweeted and reported. And I know some of the phone calls that happened the day after. And DJ stayed the day after, right? He reiterated that he was staying. There's a reason for that. And I've never once faulted DJ if it were to be true, right? Because again, I trust my sources just because, again, if let's just say everybody who was mad at me for tweeting that originally, same people that gave me the information about Tony Sanchez, the same people that gave me the information about Marvin Menzies, same people that gave me the information about whoever, haven't really been wrong yet. Now, the reason why I said about that point that I found interesting was he's doing what he should do. Hey, I'm out of here unless you get me A, B, and C. That's what he should do.
100%. And UNLV didn't give him what they need outside of financially. Like, they didn't give him a team that could compete for an NCAA.
He wanted Bear Cherry.
Then they got to stop letting him make decisions. And I love Bear Cherry, but if that's the player, like you're an NBA draft pick, potentially a first-round NBA draft pick. Bear Cherry is a junior college center from what, California?
I think he is. I can double check.
You're telling me that DJ Thomas couldn't bring in, and Bear Cherry's fine. Bring in Bear Cherry. You're telling me that's the highlight of your transfer class?
Now that might be the argument, right?
Like, I don't know. I like the Rishwain kid. I think he's a good shooter. Like Bedford and Henley, they're fine, but like
Jaden Henley might be somebody that if he leaves next season, that might be. I'm not saying that he can leave and DJ, or he can stay and DJ can leave, but I'm just saying, in addition to if we're talking about how much shakeup happens with this team, remember when a lot of shakeup was happening before and Bryce Hamilton stayed?
That's a different era, though, almost now.
No, it is completely. Only reason why I'm making that point is because there was something to hold on to. Let's just say that Kruger's gone. Let's say Rob enters the transfer portal. Let's say Bear gets some interesting offers. Let's say DJ is on the fence. If Jaden leaves, I think, like you said before, it may start to kind of slowly disintegrate to fully crumbling.
I think it will fully crumble. I mean, without being too doom and gloom. I mean, I don't really agree with the fact that he'd be the piece that would be the one to make it crumble. I think it would obviously start with DJ. I mean, not obviously.
It obviously starts with him. I think it obviously does.
It would start with DJ, and then, I mean, even with Bear, but those guys are just supplemental pieces to DJ, in my opinion. Like, that's how much of an engine DJ is compared to what those guys bring, as good as they are. There's only two other guys other than DJ averaging double figures, and DJ is a pass-first point guard, so that's kind of concerning. DJ shouldn't be the leading scorer on your team.
I agree.
And he's only averaging 4.4 assists a game per game this season.
I think he had 3 assists in the first 6 minutes against Colorado State and then had one more the rest of the game.
And part of that is because he doesn't have the safety valves he had last season. He has Bear, sure. Bear hasn't been healthy most of the season.
The Boone brothers definitely helped.
The Boone brothers were his saving grace last year, and I don't think people realize that. I mean, the quality of UNLV last season was exponentially different when they had the Boone brothers on the floor, and it was both Boone brothers. It wasn't just one or the other. They needed really both of them in the lineup to be the team they were supposed to be.
So, I first of all, usually I call my dad like after I'm covering games or whatever, and he'll be like, "How we do?" And I was like, "They're 9-7 or something," and he was like, "When did the ladies lose 7 games?" I said, "Exactly. When did they? Like, you know they didn't." And my dad kind of stopped and was like, "The men are 9-7?" Fam, I'm just telling you what I'm looking at. They're 9-7. They're 3-2 in the conference. They're 6th in the Mountain West. Back-to-back double-digit losses, and then you're welcoming
back-to-back 20-point losses.
Let's add that to it. Right now, I feel like that's what should be happening inside of the Thomas and Mack. Have you been inside the Thomas and Mack after everybody leaves? Like, I know you have before, but recently after everybody leaves?
Yeah, it's just how it feels like when
it feels really weird
10 minutes left in the first half. It's the same vibe.
I don't know if you're supposed to say that part.
I really don't care. Somebody has to. Like,
The energy in the building does feel like a funeral. It feels really weird.
It's not. It's like it's not even a funeral. It's like after everybody left the funeral. Like the funeral's already dead. We already cried. Like
It's
we
the
already
final sweep up.
It's like we already ate. We already celebrated. We already had a few drinks. Like this is the next morning. Like we're cleaning up the pieces.
Oh my gosh, bro.
It's
I should have never made that comparison.
I mean, I'm a doom and gloom guy when it comes to teams I support, and obviously I'm not supposed to say I support UNLV, but as an alma mater,
Dog, I went there. I tell you all the time. I don't want UNLV to lose, and
Like,
it does.
it's still my alma mater, so there's still a bit of personal like I feel like I can say things that like obviously you can too. Like I think we can say things that we wouldn't want to hear coming from a Reno fan.
Oh, for sure. It can't come from a UNLV
But it has
fan.
to-
What?
It has to like it's beyond tough love at this point. Like it's like your kid's junkie and you got to pull your kid to the side and like smack him up and like say like I ain't letting you back in this damn house till you get your act together. And that's how I feel going to the Thomas and Mack Center. Like I don't like coming into this damn house while your act is like this. Like
You
I
know
don't
what's
like
so
being
funny?
here.
I'm so happy that you made that comparison because what I always compare it to, I compare it to the person that got that real screwed up family or like a fraternity. Because yeah, I'm gonna let y'all know about yourselves. The moment I hear an outsider say it, I'll be like, what? No, you don't know. Kevin Kruger is doing a damn good job right now.
See that we can't do. That we can't do. That's kind of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Like
It's the delusion, bro. That's all it is.
my phone.
I was about to be like, is somebody walking into this studio right now?
I got a nice little serene ringtone. I don't get the whole bring bring.
I recently changed mine, and I can't do the like the super soft anymore. I'll tune it out. So now my
That's the
alarm is
goal.
like it's bad, bro.
I don't know. I'm always the person who's up like 3 hours before my alarm. So I'm just like,
You want to know the type of person that I am? Oh, by the way, completely random. While we wrap up this UNLV talk, completely random. You guys have seen me come in here with a huge cup the past like 2 months with like some orange stuff in it. I am ashamed to say that was an energy drink. And it's a particular energy drink. I don't even want to shout them out right now because I do want to have some business discussion with y'all. And like it's my go-to, right? Yesterday I was at home and I needed to get a lot of stuff done. So I had a headache too. So it kind of drained me. I see Markel in the chat. I didn't get to do the pod yesterday with Markel, but we're getting back to it this weekend. Had a huge headache, right? Had a game to cover. I took my vitamin D3. And I was always one of those guys growing up. I didn't really take medicine. Obviously, when you're a kid, your mom gives you your vitamins, whatever. By the time I got to about 8, I'm off that. Like I'm
100%.
I'm off that. Whatever the world has built my immune system up to, that's what it's been built up to.
only vitamins I was eating was chicken tenders.
Word, no, chicken tenders and Pop-Tarts. Like that was like my childhood diet, right? I'm chilling. And I told you guys I just turned 30 in November. I woke up and I was like, maybe I should see if this damn vitamin D3 worked. Dog, I took that vitamin D3 and was up till 4 a.m., bro. I was like, what is in these joints? So to everybody, especially my 30 and up crowd, take your damn vitamins because that I feel I'm geeked now. That's how I knew today was going to be a good show.
You heard the man.
You think Kevin takes his vitamin D3?
He does more than I do. I'll say that. Like I don't know about vitamin D3, but he definitely has more self-care methods than I do.
Hey, man,
You know
it
my
gave me some
self-care
energy.
method.
Hey, man, podcast conversations. You said the job might go up in smoke anyway. Yeah, man. And then you know what bothers me, and I kind of had to like laugh myself through it. I don't think we're anywhere near how ugly this season is gonna get. When you said this season may crumble, you're right. The reason why is because you're welcoming in your third ranked team when Utah State visits the building on Wednesday.
Utah
And I've said
State?
they're the best team in the Mountain West. And now you get to see them.
I mean, you can't really say it's not close because Boise took them right to the wire.
Right.
But I mean, I'm putting my money on one horse in that conference. I'm putting it on Utah State. And I'll tell you right now, they're gonna smoke UNLV on Wednesday.
I think it's gonna be bad.
It's gonna be bad.
I think I'm talking
It's
like
gonna-
28.
Oh, I can see a 30 piece. Like we're talking like we're gonna really see just how much the gap is between the top of the Mountain West and where UNLV is right now. Like last season, this
You got
wasn't the case.
San Diego State coming up. too.
Last
This is-
season, UNLV somehow, despite their horrible losses in the non-conference schedule and to the Air Force disaster, they still found themselves like where you could comfortably say they were probably a top 6 team in the conference based on like
Still,
you wouldn't want to see them. Like they didn't have a top 6 resume because if they did, they would have been one of the 6 teams that got in. But they were among those teams you didn't want to see. This year, that's not the case. This year, they're closer to Fresno. They're closer to San Jose State. They're closer to what Air Force is now. Like,
by the way, you just said Fresno. You said Fresno State. You said Air Force. You said San Jose State. The 3 teams that UNLV beat in the conference. All 3 of those teams, when I last checked on Saturday, were a combined 0-13.
they're not just the worst like teams in the Mountain West. Like you obviously have your tiers of conferences, right? You have the Power 5, like high major. They're the worst high major team. Like they're 3 of the worst high major teams in the country. Like the bottom of the Mountain West is terrible.
It's horrific.
And that's why it's not going to be more than a 2-bid league this season at best. It could be a 1-bid league. You might see just Utah State get in because Boise State is fixing to be the runner-up in the conference this year.
And San Diego
They
State
need
is
to
going to get
impress.
exposed.
They need to impress in their non-conference or not in their conference play schedule. I mean, because Boise State slipped up in their non-conference in a way that they have to like play beyond what they're capable of, probably in conference play, and that Utah State loss Saturday is going to hurt them in terms of having an at-large bid. So they're going to really need to win the conference tournament. And if Utah State is the team that wins the conference tournament, it's going to be a 1-bid conference.
And I'm happy that you said that because I feel like San Diego State, as most people are going to mention them at the top of the Mountain West, right? They're probably going to end up near the top of the Mountain West. If you've watched San Diego State this season, they're not San Diego State. The only reason why, and I continue to shout him out, Brian Dutcher, let's give him a round of applause. Talk about it. I watched them, and I said this before. This is how I know that they're not going anywhere. They were tied 20-20 with Air Force, right? And that's not the reason why I know that they're not going anywhere. Well, partially, but the rest of that game, I'm in the bar that night. I'm working, not even really that busy. Like that night, matter of fact, I think I took my hair out after I mopped that night. It was slow in the bar, so I'm chilling. Right, I look up. And I come back from the back, and it was 47-24. And I said, that's why they'll be at the top of the Mountain West. As much as UNLV has these moments where, like you said before, it'll be a 10-minute stretch where they look amazing. They're knocking down every shot. They're sharing the ball. Bears getting paint touches. And then you have moments where, okay, UNLV was scoreless for 4 minutes. Okay, UNLV didn't have a field goal for 7 minutes. I'm scared to see what happens when San Diego State gets here. I've said it before. I think San Diego State could score 48 points and beat UNLV. They might keep UNLV scoreless for close to half. You're laughing. I'm very dead ass right now.
Oh, I'm laughing because I can see it.
Like, if the game was 48-41, would anybody be shocked?
I think if it's 48-41, you can almost hang your hat if you're UNLV. You know what a real disaster is going to be?
What?
72-41.
Timeout. And I'm not even trying to be this guy. If you've watched San Diego State this season, if they score 65 points against UNLV's defense can't be that bad.
It's not even about being that bad. It's about how the snowball continues to roll.
I've heard that for everybody talking about a mid-season firing, same thing with Antonio Pierce, right? I'm hearing that that's not mid-season. That's not happening.
He's not going to get fired mid-season. But
say it because I was about to say it.
That doesn't mean things aren't going to keep getting worse.
And that don't mean that the sentiments won't get louder.
Oh, the sentiments are by the end of this season, it's going to be so overwhelming that it's like I think the sentiment is really what's going to drive him getting fired.
I think that's what it ultimately is too.
I think if the fan base was just sitting there taking it, UNLV wouldn't make the move. UNLV doesn't want to make the move. UNLV, the administration in a perfect world would love to have Kevin Kruger remain the basketball coach.
I would. Well, I mean, just from the outside looking in and seeing turnover at the head coach position for the UNLV men's basketball program, I said it before. I think Kevin is the right guy for the job. The problem is the points where I can say, "Hey, that's what I'm talking about." Hey, that's what I'm pointing to. It's far and few. And like you said before, some of the moments that I point to, it's in interviews with Cofield, or maybe it's one of those moments where he goes off at a ref, and I'm like, "Damn it, say something publicly." Where honestly, even though you use that in your story in your preview, yes, that quote is telling, right? But I feel like that was one of the first few times that Kevin Kruger wasn't PC. We got a problem reacting and getting punched in the face. We're going to get punched. We should react. So while it is telling, I also think that it tells something about Kevin. That little stretch last season where he was coaching with his back against the wall, he may not hear it yet, but he hears something in order to say, maybe I should kind of let these guys know that you're not reacting in these big time situations. Like I said before, I've said it going into these two games, Boise State and Colorado State. They can lose. Technically, in terms of the way that their non-conference was set up, they couldn't lose. But in my mind, they could lose. It's the way that you lose. Like I said earlier, they got their doors kicked in. That's the biggest detriment to me. I do think Utah State gets ugly. I do think San Diego State holds them under 50 or around 50.
I feel like almost like him getting fired midseason would be a bailout for him. Like, we're going to really see how bad this is going to get, because I don't think this team is going to stay motivated once they suffer their fourth 20-plus point loss in conference play in, 6 games? Like, we're talking about a team that's going to go through a stretch when this is all said and done that's damn near impossible to get yourself back up from, especially in a conference that is like the Mountain West, which might not be the strongest conference this year, but there's still teams that you can't really take a night off, and they've proven that. You couldn't even take a half off against Fresno State, not with the guys you're running out on that floor with UNLV. So,
and now, like I said before, you're welcoming in Utah State on Wednesday, 8 p.m. You got a primetime game, too. 8 p.m. from the Thomas and Mack.
Here, 11 p.m. Eastern. Half the country's sound asleep.
Even if it was 1 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, half the country would not tune into this game.
It'd be a nap time game.
This is one of them games. And you know the funny part? This is...
I actually think,
talk to me.
Beside the point, they probably get more viewers on these late night games than they would against like teams if they're competing at like a noon window. Like they're going to be the only show in town. So if you are one of those weirdos on the East Coast who stays up till 2 a.m, like I did watching West Coast basketball,
that would have been me.
You'll get to see how awful this team is.
That is hilarious. I said it all season long. I didn't know if I was watching a good team or not. I guess we're slowly figuring it out, right? 8 p.m. Thomas and Mack Center, third meeting against a ranked team. And I've said it every season that Kevin Kruger has had a Kruger catch game, is what I call it. I kind of told Kruger, you didn't get one of those in non-conference. Now you got to grab one in conference play against a ranked New Mexico or a ranked Utah State or a ranked San Diego State or just one of those teams. This is probably your last shot.
It is his last shot, because San Diego State's not going to be ranked again this year. New Mexico is not going to be ranked again this year. I don't even know if they were ranked at all this year.
I don't think they were. They were just undefeated, or they
got that win against that win against UCLA, which kind of
that's what it was.
Stock up a little bit, and they did lose one game in non-conference play.
Mm-hmm.
That's
what it was.
Did run that for a while, but yeah, Utah State
is New Mexico on top of UNLV?
They gotta be. I mean, maybe no, because it was Nevada who started terrible in conference play, 0-4. But
look at what we're arguing over right now.
Just sadness.
New Mexico is 14-3, and they're 6-0 in the conference. New Mexico is second in the Mountain West.
Yeah, it's like
you have Utah State,
and they have guys who returned from last season. Like they lost Jalen House, and like
you have Utah State, New Mexico, Colorado State, Boise State, San Diego State, and then you have UNLV. Behind UNLV, you have. Do you want the conference record or the overall record of these teams behind UNLV?
It doesn't really matter. I mean, Nevada's still behind them, right?
Yep. Wyoming's 2-3 in the conference. Nevada's 1-4 in the conference. San Jose State is 1-5 in the conference. Air Force is 0-5 in the conference, and Fresno State has not won in their.
Those are all the bums, though. So, like, if the fact, like UNLV, like I said, is probably closer to them than they are. Like
UNLV, Wyoming, and UNR are all 9-7.
Yeah, Nevada. I mean, UNR. Talk about a disappointment. I mean that's the silver lining on a horrible UNLV season is that
they suck too.
UNR had expectations and they are just as bad.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, no, I can't say they're just as bad.
I wasn't gonna say that because Utah State beat them by 5. So
I can't say they're just as bad. Their record is just as bad. They've definitely played better teams and they've definitely shown more in the games that they've won.
Now, I guess we'll get an opportunity to see whatever Kevin is able to kind of muster out of this group heading into Wednesday. I'm gonna be honest with you. We're gonna try to transition from that into some semi good news. UNLV football is kicking ass in the transfer portal. Now this is an interesting thing. I see a lot of pieces coming from different places. I'm talking LSU's, I'm talking Arizona State's, I'm talking USC's, I'm talking Virginia's, right? Michigan. And you're putting all of these guys in one spot. This could turn into like, you ever been to one of those like camps for summer? And you get a bunch of random people.
Yeah.
And you guys don't really get it together until like, I don't know, the 4th week of camp, and it's only a 6-week camp. So it's like half the camp. We don't really know what we're doing here. I see a lot of pieces, and I see a lot of opportunity at UNLV, right?
What I see is a much more professional operation being run.
That's surely what it feels like, right?
Like, all credit to Barry Odom. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for bringing the eyes of this program. Barry Odom was running a college football program. Barry Odom was running something very reminiscent to what a 2019, 2020 college football landscape, what kind of program you would be running. And you saw that with how he was paying these position players, right? He was paying them by position group. The position groups each got a set amount of money, and it was split evenly among the players. That is like the most archaic way you could do things in terms of NIL. And that really cost them, and it's kind of what screwed them in the Sluka situation. Right now...
Did it screw them? Never mind.
No, I mean...
That's why it became
a thing. I think it screwed Odom and Marion more than it did UNLV.
I think it screwed Marion.
It did. But it all, like, I don't think Odom looks great with it either. I mean, and they... On the topic of Odom, this is kind of off my point a little bit. They did not poach as many guys as I thought they would poach.
I thought they would, too.
I thought they were, and even the guys that left, Catalan, I thought Catalan was a shoo-in to go to Purdue. The fact that he didn't go to Purdue, he's one of Barry's right-hand guys. Like, that's crazy to me. He didn't.
It's a couple of them. I mean, but at the same time, too, you have a historic season at UNLV, an all-time season at UNLV. I love you, Barry, but if you're going to Purdue, and I don't know, I get a USC that calls me, I get an Ohio State that calls me, I get a Rutgers that calls me, shot the Jet Elad, I'm out. I'm not going.
100%. And I mean, I'm going to go back to my original point, how it feels like a much more professional operation.
Really quick, because I'm happy that you said that, because after the transfer portal, I want to talk about staff moves. I just want to name two of the positions that I saw? First of all, Lee Davis was hired.
Lee Davis. That's
chief of staff.
A chief of staff. Fordham didn't have no damn chief of staff. We're going to have a general manager. Like, college programs nowadays have to have a general manager. Who was the general manager of the program last season? Brennan?
Don't do that, don't.
I mean, seriously. We got to look at this and think and just look at it objectively. What UNLV is doing right now is light years above anything they've ever had in program history. And that includes Barry Odom. This recruiting operation that we're seeing right now is outstanding, and I'm
excited for some of these guys to get opportunities at the next level. I'm thinking about what Reed Williams can do.
Oh my goodness, he's a dog.
What?
And I'm surprised. Like, I obviously have my qualms with Alex Orji.
Okay.
The fact that UNLV landed a kid who was starting for the defending national champions in their week 1 game this season, a year after. I mean, we're going to have a quarterback battle between two legitimate FBS quarterbacks next season.
And I think
Power 5 quarterbacks. I disagree, but that's my side.
You think Orji wins?
Orji's such an explosive runner.
I agree, which is why
you know who Dan Mullen rose to prominence with?
I knew you were about to say this. Go ahead and say his name. Go ahead and
say Mr. Tim Tebow.
Go ahead and say double T. Go ahead.
Mr. Tim Tebow. You know who Alex Orji is?
Don't you dare.
He's not Tim Tebow, but he plays very, very, very similar in the sense that he's such an explosive runner that it doesn't even matter.
Tebow had an arm.
He didn't. No, he didn't.
Wait a minute.
Tebow did not have an arm. Go watch Tim Tebow throwing a football.
It was ugly as all hell. I think Tebow had more of an arm than people want to give him credit for.
Tim Tebow's not throwing that ball 50 yards downfield.
Is Orji?
No, but he doesn't have to.
Oh, shoot.
And I think the issue with if Calandria was a better passer, or a less of an errant passer and less of a better decision maker, I think he would run away with the job because he can also run.
Right.
He's going to be we're going to see in camp, he's going to be just as he's going to have more zip behind the ball.
He's going to
have more zip behind the ball, but we're going to be looking at these throws and we're going to be like, oof. But that was kind of the case in camp last season. Sluka was not ready for FBS football last season. As much as they want to pin, Sluka would get the snap and he wouldn't even look at his reads. He would just run, and that would have screwed them later in the season. And Hodge, we saw him kind of late in the season hit panic mode too. And I think, as good as Hodge was, we're still talking about a kid who spent his first 5 years of college football at Campbell.
Very true.
Playing in the SoCon. That's FCS, and it's not even high tier FCS. We're bringing in a kid who started games in the ACC. We're bringing in a kid who started games for Michigan.
Facts.
Who got snapped on a national title winning team.
Facts.
We're bringing in legitimate hogs on the offensive line.
Defensive line. We got a couple of dogs in the secondary. I'm excited as all hell.
One thing that the first time we played Boise
in
the conference championship game last season, I was looking on the field, and you see their offensive line, you see their defensive line, and they're huge.
Very
NFL
true.
size.
Very true.
You go see UNLV, they're not NFL size. You see a guy like Anton Ambule, all due respect, he's about 6'7". There's no meat on that bone. He's a thin guy. You're going against, now we got like real hogs in the trenches, guys that are Power 5 sized, Power 5 experienced. Jalen St. John, that was one guy we got who was a real hog in the trenches, and he was the best lineman we've had in how long?
So I'm just
Tiger
scrolling
Shanks.
through, and that's a man.
That's a hog. That's the type
That's
of
a
lineman
man.
you need. But those guys in that first Boise game, they didn't look like that. Like, they really beefed up in the offseason. And
So I just want to go through some of these names really quick. Now I know, or not names, but these schools, right? I'm gonna scroll through these signees really quick, and I just want to name some of these programs that they're coming from, because while you may feel like, oh, UNLV is a bigger program than this, let's think football while we're going through these names. While we're going through these program names. Coastal Carolina, LSU, Coastal Carolina, Utah, Arizona, Memphis, Arizona State, Michigan, Arizona State, Pittsburgh, Temple, Pittsburgh, Mississippi State, West Virginia, Temple. Do we need to keep going?
no. Real programs. Not Campbell, not Holy Cross. Guys with real experience.
Way too early to do an over-under on how many games they win, right?
Well, we have their schedule,
So it's not too early.
so it's not too early.
First of all, I'm just excited that they're opening up against Cal. I'm just happy that the storyline keeps writing what it's writing.
Are they still opening up against Cal?
It's supposed to be 2025, yeah.
Let me pull that up.
Cal won it. I think they open at home at Allegiant. My tooth hurts randomly.
Hold on, I'll pull it up.
So while you're doing that, you kind of talked about it a second ago too, but 3 new hires. Jonathan Hurd
I think the
Bond.
Cal game got taken off their schedule.
You are lying.
Because I know, because they play at Sam Houston versus UCLA at home, versus Idaho State at home, and at Miami of Ohio. But that's the schedule why I think they're going to be fine next year, because they're playing bums in the non-conference, other than UCLA, who's probably not a very good team Power 5 wise. But yeah, I don't think I think that game was taken off last offseason. I don't know what, when Cal went to the ACC,
Yeah.
they had to add another conference game.
I have to double check because I feel like me and DC just talked about this during the season. Anyway, Jonathan Hurd Bond is now the team's director of player personnel. John Clark is the director of football operations. And we just said it a second ago, Lee Davis is the chief of staff for Dan Mullen's UNLV football program. I'm kind of with you. It's looking like a real program here. And like you said before, we gotta credit Barry Odom for what he did before he left. I know a lot, like I said before too, a lot of people, I felt like I think we had this conversation about whether Barry would get hate or not. I said it depends on what happens with the next guy. I mean, I don't think Barry's gonna get too much hate. Now, if the next guy come in here and stunk, then Barry was gonna get hate. If the next guy came in here and coached here for the next 25 years, Barry's gonna get some hate. I don't think Dan is gonna do either one of those things.
No, I think we're gonna see how quickly a fan base can get over Barry Odom. And I don't
Isn't
think
it over it.
Oh, it is over it. And I think you see these Purdue people, and they're like,
Purdue people is funny.
They're like, what's going on over here? Like, we just got their coach, and they're happy. They're like, they think they're in a better place, and they are in a better place. Like,
Surely feels
I'd
that
be
way.
looking at that side.
It surely
And I'm
feels
really
that way.
not that impressed with the class Purdue's brought in. I'm sorry, I'm really not. And like, even the guys outside of like Odom's guys who he brought with him, who really were just mainly the recruiting class, and a couple of guys who didn't play much last season.
Right.
Tony Grimes, who played but got burned quite a bit. Who else?
What is happening right now?
I don't know. I call it like I see it. I have to. But I mean, yeah, I'm happy for Catalan that he's going to be playing SEC football. I'm really happy for DeJesus that he's going to go back to where he's from, basically. And, you know, obviously had a lot going on with his family this offseason.
Absolutely.
Raising his family, raising a daughter.
Yeah, man. Who is absolutely in love with him, man. Seeing her root for her daddy is super dope.
I think it's going to be real special seeing him play for Cal this season. I'm excited to see that. And I was like I didn't think he was going there, but it thought across my mind, like where I would have been kind of salty if he went to Purdue, because he's like I kind of think DeJesus in terms of like UNLV players, he's not quite Ricky and Jackson, but he's up there. Like, he's up there in terms of like players that really built this program, even probably more so than Chop, even though Chop was a huge piece of that. I think fans relate to like and recognize DeJesus so much because like we saw what DeJesus went through.
Absolutely. I think that matters.
We identify with his family.
Absolutely.
Think we see his picture on the Fertitta complex.
I also think he's an All-American.
Yeah.
Like, he's just an All-American. He's somebody who was influential in this program, influential on this campus, and obviously he's somebody that's going to be missed, right? Really quick before we move on, and we do have some Raiders to talk about. We do have some NFL playoff to talk about, and then we'll end with the Golden Knights. Before we do that, I had no choice. One of my worst, I'm not going to say fears, but one of the things that I didn't want to happen was going to happen, right? I tell you guys all the time. I know Will found out on one of the radio shows, but I'm going to always preface my hate for Notre Dame that I do not care that my cousin Tim Brown went to Notre Dame. That does nothing for me. It does absolutely nothing for me.
Dropping that casual flex up in
Just
there.
no, actually, the funny thing is, I'm just letting you guys know that I don't know why you guys tell me like I don't. My brother told me that recently. I said I don't care. What that got to do with me? I grew up where I grew up. I have a love for USC. I despise Notre Dame. And just to kind of add a little bit of right on top, I just never really cared for Penn State. It's just, I don't really got a beef with them, right? Growing up an SC fan, obviously Sam Darnold in that historic game against Penn State, maybe that's why I probably hate him a little bit. But at the end of the day, I had to sit back and watch that game knowing that one of those two guys was going to the national championship. I do want a round of applause really quick for Marcus Freeman. I don't know too many head coaches that you want to get behind and you want to run through a brick wall for. His professionalism, his ability to command a room. As much as I hate Notre Dame, I wouldn't be so mad to see Marcus Freeman hold up a championship trophy.
I agree with that. And I mean, one thing that I'm having a hard time getting past this Notre Dame team.
Okay.
That Northern Illinois loss.
They look terrific.
Like, I mean, I love the 12-team playoff in full because it makes the regular season matter so much more for so many more teams.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that you're still like
UNLV, for instance.
Like, yeah, you're gonna have a school like UNLV who's still playing for something legitimate in week 11, week 12 in the conference championship game. But I think what we're kind of seeing at the downside of this is that, like, I don't know if we're going to see the most deserving champion this year. And I don't know if, like, I mean, and I guess that's where we're going to see, like, in terms of the playoffs in the future. But it makes me wonder back in the past, like, how many times did the playoffs, like, did we not have the national champion even in the playoffs?
Right.
How many times did the BCS, like, I mean, we know the BCS probably screwed it up more often than not. But, like, I don't know. But then the downside is, like, back to my original point, I feel like the regular season now, as much as it matters for some teams, And as much as you made it matter for some teams of the 12-game playoff, for other teams, it's completely devalued. Because now you have a Notre Dame team that can still play for the national championship game after losing to Northern Illinois, which for all intents and purposes, for the entire previous history of college football, is a season-ending loss. And then you have,
well, especially when you're Notre Dame and you don't have a conference to rely on where you know that you're going to play the.
And then you have this Penn State team that they're playing, and I can't genuinely say that Penn State deserves to be in the championship game anymore because they beat a bunch of easy Big Ten teams. They had 2 real tests over the course of their season.
Can I ask you a real quick question? Would you have felt the same way if Indiana made it to the playoff? Obviously, some things would have to change during what's called, but they beat up.
But if they won Indiana, they lost Notre Dame in the first round.
Oh, damn, they did. Jeez Louise. Wait a minute. They did.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy that you just reminded me of that. Did you feel that exact same way about Indiana?
I mean, I felt Indiana should have been in the playoff because
go back to the Indiana UCLA game.
They smoked them, right? Indiana smoked them at the Rose Bowl. My thing with Indiana, and I kind of understand the criticism, but you have an 11-1 team in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have the natural ebbs and flows of conference scheduling that makes it so some teams are playing harder teams in the conference than the others. Like that's what you're going to get with super conferences now. If you had Indiana schedule a year ago, they would have had Michigan on there.
Mm-hmm.
They would have had Ohio State on there, which is a game they lost. Like in theory, with the schools on there, that's not a horrific schedule. It's still a Big Ten schedule. You go 11-1. I think you deserve a chance at a 12-team playoff. Now, if it was a 4-team playoff, do I think they should have been in? Absolutely not. But if you're going to expand the playoff to 12 teams, they're the exact reason why you do that. A team like them, who probably isn't one of the premier teams in the country when you put on the field, but they have a resume that you kind of have to look at and say, okay, they need to have a chance. The reason why I think my opinion on that would have changed, and maybe not changed, if Indiana were to get to the semifinal, we're going to talk about a team that would have had to beat Notre Dame.
True.
That would have then had to beat Penn State. That would have erased the doubts about them not playing an easy schedule. And now we're talking about a 13-1 team that beat Ohio State, or that lost to Ohio State as their only loss. With Penn State, my thing is they lost twice. They lost their 2 close games, I guess. They were obviously a better team, but at what point in this season did you think that Penn State was a national championship team?
That's first of all, I don't know if you listened to last week's show, but that was one of the reasons why I picked Texas to win it all. I watched certain moments this season where the Oregon game, where Ohio State, Michigan, where Ohio State didn't look like Ohio State. You just talked about it with Northern Illinois taking down Notre Dame. I watched that game and was like, and I was ecstatic. I was like, see, that's why they don't belong. Living my dream, right? You go to Penn State. I looked at several points this season and I was like, they don't really look the way they should look if they're one of them. But I looked at Texas and I said, even in games where they don't look like they should look, they win. I looked at that Arizona State game and I was like, they're going to find a way to lose this. Once they won, I was like, okay, this might be a team that's kind of built for destiny, which is why I find it interesting of what you said about, are we going to get a real national, I shouldn't say a real one, but is the best team going to win? I
mean, I think I maybe worded that a little harshly because I think it is like, we are going to see.
I think seeding is going to be vastly different.
We are going to see. And that's my one gripe with it. Like, you gave a team like Penn State a very clear path to a potential national championship. And how did they earn that? Oregon, the number 1 team in the country, 13-0, win the conference championship. What was their reward?
Ohio State.
A redo with Penn State, who they beat in the conference championship game. They trounced them in the conference championship game. Their reward, they got to play Boise State, and they got to go. I'm drawing a blank.
The first round, all the first round
matchups. SMU. They got blanking. They got SMU and then Boise State. SMU had no business being in the playoff.
I was rooting for SMU too.
I was rooting for them because I knew what the narrative would have been, and I knew what the narrative, I mean, obviously turned into.
I do want to let you know this really quick. I had the conversation with Mike Hughes, and shout out to Mike Hughes too, who I just looked down at my phone and he texted me. Shout out to my guy Mike. We had a conversation really quick about college football, and he was saying that, kind of based on what you said, that we're going to go through all of this, and usually one of the top 4 teams are going to win. And I told Mike, I said, you're probably right. because we probably gave the committee a little bit too much credit in terms of seeding, because this seeding probably was really bad in hindsight, or kind of bad in hindsight. But if you go back to that episode, I'm like, hopefully I can remember what episode it is, and I can tell you guys. But I told Mike, I said, all you need is one. All you need is 1 year where you get, I don't know, a 8 versus a 3, a 7 versus a 2. Like you just need 1 year. We got an 8 versus a 7 in the national championship.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of the things I said apply to Ohio State too. We're talking about an Ohio State team that failed its regular season. They lost to Michigan. They lost to Oregon. Any other year in Ohio State football history,
It's a failure.
this is a forgotten season. Maybe not a forgotten season. Maybe it's C.J. Stroud in the Rose Bowl. That was a great season. Wasn't a national championship season. How much do you want to bet if that team got in, they would have ran the table? It's just like, it makes you, I don't hate it. I kind of like it, but it makes you rethink the entire history of college football in a way.
I've definitely gone back to the BCS era a little bit in my mind.
I guess, I almost feel like, it's just obviously not the right way. The 90s, you like everything pre BCS era, you kind of just have to chalk up as like a judge, like the media, like there was it was the wild, wild west. So like,
I want this one.
Like, yeah, but the BCS era, post that, it makes you question everything, right? Like, it makes you question, like, especially a year like 2007, right? Where you leave out
a year that a lot of people are gonna look back to.
You leave out Ohio, or you not leave out. You put LSU in. I forgot who they got in over. That should have been in.
07. Oh, that was Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think it was.
It was Oklahoma. And also people are going to go back to UCF's national championship year, right? And I'm saying national championship with quotations because they had an argument from the standpoint of expand this joint. Maybe we can do something. We don't have to play in the. Did they play in the Fiesta Bowl that year?
Well, I loved what UCS did, or not UCF. I love what they.
I like
did.
what they did too.
Who are you to tell them they're not the national champions?
Added on the stadium.
They won every single game they played
and won our bowl game.
The NCAA doesn't decide an official football champion. The college football playoffs are an entity entirely comprised of ESPN and a few other shareholders. It's not an official college football champion. UCF won all their games. They won their bowl game. For 90% of college football history,
facts.
UCF had a legitimate claim for a national title. And the reason they did get to claim the national title is because they were crowned a national champion by one of the original polls that was part of crowning the national champions back in the day, the Sagarin poll.
And the funny thing is about that too, like you just said before, resume speaks. We didn't lose a game. We won our bowl game. What more do you need us to do from this standpoint, right? I will let you know this. I was at the bar a couple of days ago, and somebody was cleaning the menus. Shout out to my guy Daniel. Somebody was cleaning the menus behind. Well, Daniel was. And only thing I hear at the time, I just know it's somebody. At the time, I hear, "Get these kids out of the way. The grown-up race starts tomorrow." And I looked over my shoulder. I said, "Are you talking about the NFL playoffs?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "In that, since you're talking about that, in that regard, I'm with you. Get these kids out of the way." Like, dog, the grown-up race starts tomorrow. Every game in the wild card round is done with the exception of one that you have to cover when we get out of here in terms of the LA Rams and the Minnesota Vikings, which I think people are not talking about the Rams enough, but whatever. Let's go ahead and talk about what we've already witnessed. Where do you want to start? You want to start near home base with Buffalo? I do have an interesting bet that I have to tell you guys about too. So
yeah, Ravens Bills, that's the one I'm looking forward to. But the Denver game, I wasn't expecting anything different.
31-7 is what we expected.
I was surprised to see the Bills, or not the Bills, the Broncos strike first. That was the Franklin, rookie to rookie, next to Franklin.
At a certain point, that's adrenaline, right?
Yeah.
Like, we talked about it before.
Like, I saw that, and I was kind of like, oh, we might have a little fight here. And then
I talked about it before with Lindy and her Lady Rebels a couple of years ago when they played Stanford. I was like, this team is so young. that it's almost like they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
So like I don't know that I'm supposed to be nervous. Like I'm here. I probably shouldn't be here. I'm gonna play. I'm just
gonna
gonna
be a
play
real
what I know
problem
how.
next year. They're gonna be a real problem next year.
Well,
It'll be like
100%.
it'll be like that second year of Joe Burrow, even though Burrow's injured his first season. It'll be like that Bengals team, I think, where they're gonna have a real solid defense with Nick Bonito. They're gonna have an offense like you've seen this season that's gonna grow upon what it was this year. They're gonna be an issue.
I just want us to be very, very careful with comparing people to Joe Burrow because I think
No, I'm not saying he's going to beat Joe Burrow. I'm saying it's just going to be like that kind of situation with a second-year quarterback where like he finds himself. I mean, keep in mind that was essentially Joe Burrow.
Jalen Hurts breakout? Well, first breakout season. His second year.
His second year, I think. Yeah.
So yeah, maybe similar to that. Only reason why I say that is because Joe, and this is the one caveat. To me, and I'm sure you would agree, but just Joe as a pure passer is just
he's the best passer in the league.
Yeah, probably. Just a random question. Where does CJ Stroud land on that for you? In terms of just pure passing? Because he had a down year this year.
You're passing pretty highly, but his decision making, like, I don't know. He had a sophomore slump this year for sure.
For sure. Which is why
his processing wasn't really what you would expect it to be.
I think Bo Nix passing isn't going to take that next step next year. But I think in between the ears is where he takes a step up. Which is why I think
I don't know how much better his passing can ever get.
What that's what I'm saying. And unfortunately, they're only going to get more film on you.
But he is athletic enough where I think it can be like. I don't know.
We can still make something of it.
He kind of reminds me of a way like a somewhat less athletic Kaepernick.
I'm not mad at that.
Like, just kind of like a slasher.
You know what? And this is gonna sound really crazy, because the person I want to name, if Bo has it between the ears, he's gonna be a more athletic Tony Romo. Because that's what people could say about Romo, right? He could pass the football. Romo wasn't running, and then even when Romo did, Romo was.
I think Romo was probably a more surgical passer. I think Romo was probably
for sure
very underrated as a passer because of the way he crumbled in big moments.
Which is why I feel like if Bo has it here, he'll be a more athletic Tony. You don't have to pass the football as well as him, but he's going to go and get you 16 yards with his legs that Tony wasn't going to get you, and maybe he doesn't crumble in those big moments. That's just what I see. I see a more athletic Tony Romo. I seen Tony in moments where it's 3rd and 8 and it's about to hit the 2-minute warning. Your team is down 8. You need the touchdown and the 2-pointer. And I'll watch him float one way, float the other way, and somehow, some way, he's pushing behind his offensive line and he's getting the first down with his legs. He made that a lot more difficult than it had to be. I could see Bo doing the same exact thing off a design run. That was my only point.
And then back to the Bills.
Talk to me. And then we'll take that to go to Buffalo.
Well, we'll go to Buffalo.
I mean, I'm sorry. Take that to go to Baltimore.
I think, well, on the topic of both of them, we're looking at, like, I think this is the Super Bowl Sunday. Like,
I do too.
I think the winner of this game is going to win the Super Bowl. Because the Lions are banged up on the NFC side. The Eagles just lost Nakobe Dean for the season, so you're starting to see the injury bug bite them. The Chiefs, I don't care if they lost 2 games in the regular season. They do not have the offensive firepower this season to keep up with either Baltimore or Buffalo. If I had to guess right now, I'd say Buffalo wins because they have the more potent offense overall. I'm not biased. I'm a Patriots fan.
No.
So I hate the Bills.
That's the best fact of this show. If you guys did not know that.
Horrible, by the way. Just a horrible existence now.
You get Mike Vrabel. I know I'm rushing. I'm putting the cart before the horse. But yeah, I mean, hey, there you go.
I'm pleased. I think we probably should have did that last season instead of doing the whole.
Mayo was in the building. It made sense.
I get it because I mean the entire reason they hired Mayo was because he had a provision in his contract that said he was the next coach of the Patriots, and if they didn't make him the next coach of the Patriots, they would have had to pay a buyout.
I bet you Kraft probably would have paid just paid the buyout at this point.
Well,
got to pay one anyway.
He is, but Kraft is the guy who preaches loyalty, and Mayo was one of those guys. Like, I mean, there's kind of like a Cosa Nostra thing going on with the.
It sounded like
Robert
It sounded like he
Kraft.
kicked his son out of his house when he announced that he fired Jerry Mayo. It sounded like he was crying writing that statement.
Because he knows the situation he put Mayo in, and he knows the
agree.
way it makes it look. And I mean, Kraft isn't the best guy, but I think he's socially aware enough to see like
How it looks,
how it looks for an old,
knowing that he
an
was going to
old
go get
white man to put a black head coach in that position, give him that deck of cards, and then when it goes how we all knew it was going to go, to put the blame on him and then say to the media, "Oh, that we had these things going on all season." I really don't think Vrabel. I mean, I think he can fix it, but it's going to have to be a full rebuild. Because I think the problems with the Patriots start at the top. It starts with Kraft. It starts with the fact that it's now a whole entire nepotism operation, and the fact that Belichick and Brady were probably the two foils for that happening to begin with. Like, I'm not pleased with that ownership, but that's beside all the topics.
My bad. Back to the playoff teams. But Buffalo and Baltimore, I kind of agree with you. I do think that ultimately that will play out to be our Super Bowl, right? And the funny thing was, Becky Hammond said it before, right? And she said it before, and I forgot what it was. She said it was no disrespect to Connecticut, I think, the year that they won that first one. She said that battle with Seattle, I think she pointed to. And she was like, that was like, we had to come back home. We had to get a win, like to move on. Like, whenever she was talking about that, like she said, I'm not trying to disrespect the championship series. That one felt different. And I think everybody going into, regardless of what happens with LA and Minnesota tonight, everybody is going into next weekend saying this Baltimore-Buffalo game, let one of these two teams, specifically one of these two quarterbacks, stand out. Everybody's betting on them to win it all.
I think everybody's going to bet on them to win it all anyway, because I think a lot of it's just Chiefs fatigue, too. People don't want to see the Chiefs win, and people bet emotionally.
I'll say this really quick. Same thing that I've said before, same thing I'm going to say again, and I have to keep reiterating these stories in case you guys are first-time listeners. 3 years ago in the Mountain West, maybe 4 years ago in the Mountain West, we were at the Thomas, or not the Thomas and Mack, we were on campus still doing shows from the editing bay inside of Greenspun, right? In the Mountain West, in terms of football, was a bloodbath. Like, everybody was whacking everybody off, right? That sounds crazy. And I'm so glad I'm not on the show with Cam and Mace. And like, everybody is like getting knocked off, like just left and right, right? Even Boise's losing games, Fresno State's losing games, UNLV is winning games that they shouldn't. But then you look back, and it's like, wait a minute. We're going to do all of this commotion. We're going to have all of this anger and stress and everything else. It's going to boil down to Boise State and Fresno State. And if it does, we did all of this for nothing. You just said what you said about Chiefs fatigue. If, and I mean if, they win it again, we did all of this for nothing.
I have to agree reluctantly, and I think it would be horrible for the NFL.
You think?
In terms of generating interest moving forward, I think they'll get their TV viewers. They'll cash in on the Taylor Swift effect for one more year. What's the storyline going to be next season?
They can't do it again. I hate to say it. If they win it again, I think the viewership is up next season, because I think that you would even argue that KC would be one of the top seeds in the AFC based on what they did this year.
I don't know if it. I don't think
possession
wins will ever affect viewership.
Well,
I think the NFL. I think it'll affect like the perception of the league. Like, I think the NFL is such a monopoly of has such a monopoly of professional sports viewership in America that you could literally watch two Pop Warner teams under the NFL branding, and that's going to get $43 million viewers.
People tune in for flag football.
That's what I'm saying. Like, people are going to watch the NFL just like they'd watch me and you play quarterback if we went out.
If the NFL told them to.
Exactly.
So here's the thing. So if we're going to look at that, and you look at Kansas City and Houston this upcoming weekend, I think you have majority of the world rooting for CJ Stroud in Houston. I think back to what Daryl told.
I want to see either Lamar or Allen take down Mahomes. I want to, because Burrow did it. We saw Burrow go to Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs and go to the Super Bowl. So don't tell me it can't be done.
No, it can be done.
And don't tell me it needs to be Tom Brady either.
Well, here's
you're telling me that these two quarterbacks that we've crowned, both of them at certain times this season, we've crowned them the MVP. Lamar would be a 3-time MVP should he win it this year. They have to do it. It's not next season the Chiefs have to be beat. The Chiefs have to go down this year. It has to happen in the AFC Championship game this season, or the AFC next season. It's going to be it's going to be so malaise because we're not going to be able to even celebrate regular season accomplishments next season until we know that the Chiefs are going to be down in the playoffs.
But see, that's the thing. I don't think people need to again, it's a want more than anything. People tuned in to watch Floyd lose for 50 fights, 51, I think, or whatever the hell it was. I don't know if that's going to happen. The reason why I bring that up is because I go back to what Daryl said really quick about Dave McMenamin, or what Dave said, or what Daryl said to Dave McMenamin from ESPN. Respectfully speaking, he talked about Minnesota, and he was like, well, I feel like you got to graduate. Like every year is like a step. I think back to CJ Stroud, right? And he won a playoff game already. Now he wins another one this year. Just in terms of steps being taken, this year you should win 2. And I'm just going back to what we said before about Kansas City throughout the regular season. You can point to 6 different moments throughout the regular season where they probably should have lost. They didn't. Well, 5 of those they didn't, right? And in one of those you can rank wherever you rank it. But we know that Buffalo game. Buffalo was the first team to show, hey, this is how you finish them off. I don't know that a Houston team that I had losing to the Chargers in the first round can't go into Arrowhead and shock them.
I think they could. I think, the one, as a Patriots fan, I'll go back to them more time.
I wish you wouldn't.
2010, we never that was the year that they lost to the Jets in the divisional round.
2010?
After beating after beating them 45-3.
That was Mark Sanchez's AFC championship year.
It was one of them. Yes, don't remind me. But
he did have to.
I raised that point to say that before we saw that, it was kind of like we only really saw Brady lose in Super Bowls and to pay into equal adversaries. Every great quarterback and every great team is gonna have a slip up eventually where you're like, what the hell happened? That could be Sunday against the Texans, because the Texans, obviously, they're no slouch. They have a very strong defense and a very strong defensive-minded coaching staff.
People aren't talking about DeMeco Ryans enough.
They have a quarterback who can sling the rock when he's in his right. Quarterback. I thought you were talking to me.
Oh no, I was.
They have a quarterback who can sling the rock when he's in his right state of mind. They have a wide receiving core that, even without Tank Dell, is still potent with Nico Collins,
which is insane.
And I mean, I think it would be disappointing in the sense that I think we want to see the Chiefs versus whoever comes out of that Ravens-Bills matchup, but it would also be a pretty decent relief to just get the Evil Empire out of the picture.
Speaking of getting the Evil Empire out of the picture, if you had to root for an underdog in this particular playoff run, at some point you wait for rookies to hit a rookie wall, and usually in a playoff game is where it hits, right? I think back to Robert Griffin's rookie season, and he ran into the Packers in the postseason, and it looked bad. It looked really bad. And I looked at it last night in terms of Tampa, and I was like, I'm going to know based on this first drive if Jaden is going to hit a wall tonight. I watched that first drive and said, the sad part is he looks composed. I said, as long as he looks composed, I don't know that we're not looking at a Russell Wilson type of stretch right now.
It's certainly possible, and I think that's not an easy Tampa Bay team to beat on the road. We're talking about a top 5 offense in the league with legitimate playoff experience. That's a team that, the sharp money was on Tampa Bay last night. Make no mistake about it. People were on Tampa Bay. The fact that Jaden Daniels was a rookie, even going into that game with a quarterback like Baker Mayfield on the other side, you have more trust in Jaden Daniels just based off what we've seen this season. Just knowing that he's a guy who can run for 800 yards in a season. Just knowing he's a guy who threw for 25 touchdowns and less than 10 interceptions this season. You trust that. It doesn't matter if that's a rookie. It doesn't matter if he's in the league for 5 seasons. We're in a different kind of a different landscape of sports in general, but especially the NFL, where it's not going to take 5 to 7 years to develop a quarterback anymore, and it can't. It's not like it was in the early 2000s and the late 90s when Peyton Manning was coming into the league and he could get away with throwing 20 plus interceptions his first couple of years in the league. You do that one time your rookie season, you're done.
Even with Aaron Rodgers, think about how long he waited. I don't think you'll see that anymore. Really.
I think like the natural ebbs and flows of the league are going to make it so we are kind of due for a rookie to go to the Super Bowl. Historically, will it happen this year? No, but it's gonna maybe not. I shouldn't say no. I don't think it will.
I don't know what the chances are, but Jaden Daniels seems like the perfect guy to send with that perfect group. By the way, I've said it a couple of years
eventually
ago.
Is the point.
But I said it a couple of years ago.
A rookie quarterback is going to go to the Super Bowl eventually.
But I said it a couple of years ago. Terry McLaurin, y'all might have forgot who he was because there was nobody to throw him the football. This is who he is, and this is who he has been. That alone gives me more hope in what Washington is doing because there is a for sure number one, and there's a for sure chemistry there. They have a tight end in Zach Ertz, who's A, battle tested, and B, is still reliable. I don't want to be blasphemous, but I mean, I'm getting a Jason Witten feel this season. Just in terms of, okay, shit, worst case scenario, let me dump the ball off. He's there. I know he is. So that alone is a plus for Washington, right? I don't know that it matters if you go into Ford Field and you run into that buzzsaw between Dan Campbell and that offense. And then obviously we have tonight's game. Winner moves on to take on Philly. The funny thing is, going into that game, just so you guys know, everybody knows I grew up a Packer fan. Going into that game, I told my dad going in, I said, the only way that the Packers win this game is if Josh Jacobs has one of those nights. I said, and I'm going to be honest with you, I said, I think the game is semi-close because Josh is going to have one of those nights. I said, maybe end of the third quarter, start of the fourth. I said, it's going to start. They're going to start to pull away. I'm watching the game. And this is why I don't think Philly goes to the Super Bowl ultimately, right? I'm watching the game. And I'm covering UNLV's game at the same time. So it's on in the background. And every time I'm watching, I'm like, the funny thing is, we have no business being in this game. And we're in it. Halftime hit. And I'm like, we might have a shot. We might be able to slide in the back door where we probably shouldn't be. We could probably do it. And then obviously what happened. I don't know the way Philly feels right now, but just in terms of what I've heard about their fan base, I don't know if you could ever be unhappy after a playoff win. I don't think Philly fans are ecstatic about that win.
Well, Philly fans, of course, are a different breed, but
100%.
I mean, you lose Nakobe Dean, like I mentioned earlier in
Yeah.
that game for the season. I mean, that's a breakout defensive player. They don't, I mean, and you see how they ended the season last year, where you kind of see how quickly it can unravel for this Eagles
Right.
team. And I think the fans obviously are getting a little bit of PTSD from that, and they're kind of sensing like, oh, is this going to unravel now at the worst time? And it very well could. But I think having Saquon Barkley is a pretty good antidote for that.
I mean, you can't go wrong with Saquon, right?
I mean, I had a feeling he was going to have a career year this season, just leaving New York and going to that offense.
I thought he would too.
2,000 yards is crazy.
But again, it goes back to the stories writing themselves. Like, I love what we do, and I'm not saying it's an easy job, but there are some stories that are easier to write than others. You just said it before. You felt like he would have one of those seasons. Why did you feel that way? Well, because the Giants are so piss poor, you put him anywhere around some type of competence, he probably does otherworldly things. And we saw otherworldly things come from him. So you've just been around sports long enough to know, hey, this is probably going to work out for him, right? And ultimately it was. Ultimately it did. But before we move on fully from the NFL playoffs really quick, we talked about Detroit and we talked about kind of running into a buzzsaw. That offense looks like it can do whatever it wants at moments, at times. I see why Tom Brady wants to strike up a relationship with Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. We don't have a Jared Goff here in Vegas. Unless you're going to turn Aiden into him.
I think they would find what they need to get. You got to bring a guy like Ben Johnson in. You really do. I think he's like their Sean McVay, like that kind of talent offensively.
That's the way the league is looking at him for sure.
And I think that's how you have to look at him, because look at what he did to that Detroit offense. They're absolutely insane. And Jared Goff, I'll say to you, he's no world beater before he was no world beater going into that offense. They revived
and he came from Sean McVay.
They revived his career in a sense that, like, Jared Goff is looked at as one of the premier quarterbacks in the league right now. He wasn't going to get traded from Los Angeles if the Rams thought that. So, I mean, when you say we don't have a Jared Goff, I would say we don't know if we have a Jared Goff.
That's what
we don't know. We don't know where this Jared Goff could be. We don't know if maybe it's Sam Darnold.
I've always liked Sam Darnold.
I've always been a Darnold guy myself.
I like Darnold. I've always liked Darnold. Well, and granted, too, I said it before. Same thing I said about Baker when Baker finally got out of Cleveland and he went to Carolina. I'm sorry. If you want me to judge a quarterback like a Sam Darnold, I heard terrible things about Josh Rosen. I, still trying to be true to my field, said I refuse to judge any quarterback in that Miami system until they figure it out. It's kind of the same thing with Darnold. I looked at Darnold and I was like, okay, you got to deal with Adam Gase and the New York Jets. That's tough. And then you left there and went to Carolina. Dog, I know nobody wants to hear this, but like the first 5 years of Sam Darnold's career is like a wash to me. I don't even look at it.
I think people are starting to realize now when they see like a player like Darnold or like a player like Baker Mayfield revive themselves so quickly. Quarterback is such a situation-dependent position.
Look at Bryce.
And it's almost like baseball in the sense.
Carolina again.
It's almost like, and Bryce, yeah. It's almost like baseball in the sense where, like, if you know you're going to go up there and strike out, if you think you're going to go up there and strike out, you're striking out. If you're a quarterback in this league and you can't see that ball go through the hoop and you're getting batted around, whether it's the system, whether it's the coaching, whether it's just the fact that you're not ready, that's a detriment to your growth. And to have a quarterback like Darnold or Mayfield get past that and a different system shine, you kind of see like, oh, what even is like this evaluation system that we've put on quarterbacks?
I guess it's only going to get more and more confusing as time goes. You got some interesting level of talent, obviously, coming in with this quarterback class. I know we've had some names that we thought would be a part of the draft that aren't anymore, that entered the transfer portal or announced they were coming back or kind of are still on the fence. I still think there's a lot of arms in this draft. Ultimately, how many years they have in them at the professional level is what remains to be seen. But yeah, needless to say, the Raiders have a lot to kind of figure out. Last question before we move on to our last topic, which is the Golden Knights. And I see a lot of people in the chat right now. We appreciate you guys for showing love. We thank you guys as always. Is Mark Davis going to make the mistake again of hiring a head coach before he hires a general manager? And I only say mistake because neither one of the guys are here that you hired last year.
I think he will. I don't know if it would be a mistake this time, though, because they're going to hire a GM. It's probably going to be this spy tech guy from Tampa Bay who Brady worked with. Brady is, for all intents and purposes, going to be in charge of the football operations here. So whoever they're bringing in, it's going to be a guy who's working in tandem with Brady. So we have the GM, for all intents and purposes. He's here. He's in Vegas. He's doing the coaching search. He's finding the quarterback of the future. Whatever guy he brings in is going to be someone who he has complete camaraderie with. So, we're seeing it. We're seeing what we have.
Somebody just commented right now that the Raiders have an extreme amount to figure out. I think it's valid. I think when it comes to the Raiders, you have
not
a better
just a quarterback
argument.
Issue.
The easier way to address the Raiders situation is what do you have? You have Christian Wilkinson coming back, hopefully healthy. You have Max Crosby coming back, hopefully healthy. You have Tom Brady running everything. You have Brock Bowers. You have a generational talent. I still think you have two top-tier tight ends. I don't care. Two top-tier tight ends. I know what I saw in Michael Mayer. I think you need to get that running back situation figured out. I think you need to stop yanking the chain of Aiden O'Connell. I think you need to figure out what you're doing there. I think Gardner is probably no longer in silver and black. These are just small things that the Raiders need to figure out, but it's definitely a grip.
I think it could be a blessing in disguise that they didn't get that top pick to get Shedeur or Cam, because they would have gone in. A quarterback like Shedeur, especially, he's going to need to be in a very specific situation to succeed with the style that he plays, and putting him on Las Vegas would have been a disaster in terms of, like, their best lineman right now in terms of performance was Jackson Powers-Johnson, who was a rookie himself. Like, this is a team that needs to be rebuilt before they throw on a rookie into the fire at quarterback. I think their best bet would be to sign a quarterback in free agency this offseason, draft maybe Jackson Dart if you can get him with, like, I mean, I don't know if where he's on draft boards. Like,
I've mentioned Jackson Dart before.
Is he a first rounder, early first? If you can get away with taking him in the second, I think you do that and maybe go for, like,
I think he'll go late to second.
Maybe go with, like, a Will Johnson.
That would be nice.
You know, a little something like that.
I don't know if the Raiders do that. I think the Raiders go pressure.
I would like to see them draft Ted McMillan. Get another receiver.
I don't know, brother.
I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be a good idea, but I think he's like. I think Ted McMillan's going to be like a generational receiver. So it's kind of like.
Does it matter who you have throwing to him? Because that's what the Raiders got to ask before they do that.
No, did it matter who was throwing to Brock Bowers this season? You get another guy who can go in and get you 8 to 10 catches a game like Brock Bowers right away. Who's to say Aiden O'Connell can't improve a little bit, just enough to get you through this season with 5-6 wins? Like, you're not a playoff team.
I liked Aiden this year.
You're not a playoff team.
Apparently, Antonio Pierce liked Aiden this year too.
Yeah, but my point is, when you're drafting like the best player available like that, you're not ready this season. You keep drafting players like this, eventually you will be. Eventually you will have stars that you can sell tickets with. Part of the reason why people look back so fondly to those 2021 Raiders team, even though they were a first round playoff exit and rather mediocre, they had stars.
Yeah.
They had Derek Carr. They had Josh Jacobs. They had Devontae Adams.
I don't think Tay was there yet.
Maybe he wasn't, but
Tay wasn't there yet.
They still had that core the next season when he was. So, like, that was selling tickets. What did we see this season? And at the ass stadium at the end of the year.
Well, it was full, just with the other team.
Yeah, until we had like the Jaguars come and the Falcons, where there's no visiting fans coming, and you just see.
Oh man! Oh no! That Jaguar game was a ghost town. That was a ghost town for sure. Well, one place that's never a ghost town, especially here in Vegas, and that's the Fortress. A 4-1 victory for Vegas over Minnesota last night. Shout out to Isaiah Torres, who was there for the company last night. Shout out to Zay. 4 straight goals. They go down 1-0 early in that one, and then they score 4 straight to get the victory. Pavel Dorofeev, 2 goals on the night. I believe he had 3 points on the night. I got to double check, but he had 2 goals on the night. Both of them came in power play opportunities. This group continues to shine. One thing I want to add really quick: Aiden Hill gave up a goal on the 3rd shot that he faced. First of all, that's just, I don't want to call it a trend because he's in between the pipes a lot, but that's something to pay attention to. It may be one of those things this season where and I have to go back and check previous seasons, Aiden may be somebody that the best time to strike in terms of him may be early. It may be best to put that pressure on him early, because especially when this Vegas defense is playing the way that it is, because he gives up a shot on his he gives up a goal on his 3rd shot, the 3rd shot that he sees of the night. And then he only sees 13 shots the rest of the night. So it gives you an idea in terms of what this Vegas defense looks like and what this defense is when it's composed and it's playing together and as a unit. This Vegas team, if it can keep Aiden Hill, I'm going to say Aiden O'Connell, if it can keep Aiden Hill to only see Aiden saw 16 shots last night, and he saved 15. You're going to win a lot of hockey games if your goalie is only seeing 16 shots.
And that's kind of like the system that they've always had, right? Where it's kind of like it's hard to see how much and how valuable a goalie is in the Golden Knights system because their defense is so strong. And yeah, that kind of probably screwed Logan Thompson for years in terms of value, because now you see him go to Washington and he's been very, very good there
dog.
for a team that's probably going to, potentially meet the Golden Knights in the Stanley Cup final this season.
That would be fire.
So, I mean, it goes to show it could be a positive or a negative for guys. For Adin Hill, it's definitely a positive. We'll see how positive it is if he ever goes somewhere else and he has to sustain this performance. But Logan Thompson's really the first one who has.
Yeah, and that's been the biggest thing, right? But I think back every time I see this defense play the way it plays, the way it's been playing recently, I sit back and I think back to what Logan Thompson said. And like you just said before, he's looking like a genius in terms of going over to Washington because he's backed up everything that he said. Like he kind of did in his introductory press conference with Washington. Let's just see how I do here. Let's just see what the opportunity is when I don't have Vegas's defense in front of me, which you guys have said for years kind of eliminates opportunities for me to kind of shine, right? And again, it's in tandem, obviously, the goalie and defense. However, it appears that some are blanketed by the defense and some feel like their play could be somewhat blanketed by the defense, for lack of a better term.
That's never a bad thing. You always want your defense to supplement the goalie, and you don't want your goalie's job to be hard. So it's not a bad thing per se that Logan Thompson had a lot of help when he was here. It's just, it leaves a guy like that maybe feeling a bit undervalued.
I'm happy that you said that. Really quick, before we move on, we're talking goalie play. So, round of applause. Marc-Andre Fleury was inside the fortress again last night. I'm not going to hold you guys. I did this thing. I don't know if you've seen it on social media. Maybe this was like 2 or 3 years ago. They had a list of 10 people. And basically you put 10 celebrities and one of the celebrities you've never met. And because of the field that we're in, I'm sure that our list would be pretty dope, right? In my list, I had everybody or whatever. And Kevin Hart was on my list that I had never met. Mm-hmm. Just so you guys know, in terms of sports, I had one of the homies hit me one day and was like, "Hey, I heard you on ESPN something." We were having a conversation. And he was like, Well, who haven't you talked to? Like, who haven't you interviewed? Like, there are plenty that can come to mind now, but in the time I couldn't think of it. I didn't cover the Golden Knights until after Fleury was gone. That is one interview that to this day I want.
Yeah,
I want that one bad, bro.
He was like the Golden Knight, which is, and I remember the reaction when he got traded. That was like the first time I ever really saw Vegas as a sports city. Like, since I live in here, like, have a heartbreak.
Oh, like, it was a breakup, 100%.
And yeah, you have like the agent tweeting those pictures of like Fleury getting stabbed in the back. I don't know. I will say this, and I was not sad to see him go.
Oh, you're tripping.
Because let's look back at that playoff run, that subsequent, like that season before his departure.
Mm-hmm.
They're a Stanley Cup team, potential Stanley Cup champion. If in that game 2 against Montreal, off his skate, they win that game. They beat that team in 4 games. They go and win the Stanley Cup.
Time out. You gotta give Hall of Famers cause for error.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
Not in that situation.
That situation is probably less likely to forgive, but you don't get rid of the guy.
I don't think it was just because of that.
It was age as well. It
was because when they put in the backup, there wasn't much of a fall off, and that there was actually sitting Fleury in big games of that postseason run. Because after that debacle with his skate, they did sit him because, like, you don't just come in the next game and have your mental about you. I don't know. I think that was when it was just, to me, that it was run of his course. And then you have his agent tweeting the dumb BS that he was tweeting. Like,
don't you?
And that started. The agent started the tweeting because Fleury was benched because he wasn't performing up to snuff.
That, first of all, an agent's job is an agent's job. I'll leave it at that.
An agent has to do their job professionally.
I completely agree.
Which he
not everyone
not
does.
Doing.
Not everyone does either. And I also want to say too, do you feel like some things are culture hires?
Yeah.
I just feel like that one at the time. You know what you might laugh. You know what I think would have been better? A Jerry Krause type of approach. this is going to be your last season with this.
Maybe, but I think that would have just caused so much drama. I mean, they didn't.
So if it
They
truthfully
didn't make the playoffs the next season anyway, so maybe it wouldn't. But I mean, it would have just made the breakup 10 times messier, in my opinion.
the breakup is going to be.
And I mean, what they kind of did, they had that lost season in 22 where they didn't make the playoffs, the only time in franchise history. And then in 23, the Fleury breakup's a distant memory.
Yeah, I was about to say once you hoist the cup, all is forgotten, right?
I would
all is
wait.
forgiven.
Like, I mean, there was a time last year, or not that, in 2023, where I thought Marchessault would have gone down as the more beloved Golden Knight.
With that Conn Smythe, he might.
Nah, well, he left in unceremonious fashion too, and
There's hardware with him. Unfortunately, with Fleury,
agree.
his hardware and his Hall of Fame.
I agree in the sense that Marchessault's the greatest Golden Knight of all time right now. It's gonna be Eichel, but right now because Marchessault was an original misfit and he did get the hardware and the Conn Smythe, he does have to be. Like, if you were going to retire a number, it has to be 81.
Do you put Marchessault over Mark Stone today? I don't think I do.
Because of the Conn Smythe, yeah.
I don't think I do.
The Conn Smythe is such a prestigious award in hockey.
I agree.
That you like. It's beyond winning. It's beyond winning the Finals MVP in any other sport. It's almost like winning an MVP award. It's like in any other sport, if the MVP award is up here, the Finals MVP is somewhere like around here. In hockey, the MVP is up here. The playoff MVP, which is the Conn Smythe, is like right up here. Marchessault did that, and I mean, you could make the case that it should have been Eichel, but it did go to Marchessault, so that has to count for something in terms of being the greatest player in your franchise history.
Well, bigger than franchise history. Let's talk about what they look like this year. They're 29-11-3 on the year. That's good for 61 points. They're currently in a three-way tie with Washington and Winnipeg for the best record in the league. They are still first in the Pacific Division. I think Edmonton and LA in order are looking up at the Knights. They're back on the road. First of a 3-game road trip. Tomorrow, they head to Nashville to take on the Predators. That will be 5 p.m., the time for the scheduled puck drop. The Knights are undefeated in their last 3 road games. So just to give you guys an idea of what this team looks like presently constructed. I don't think my dad sent me a tip in today. Did he? No, I don't think my dad sent me a tip. Maybe I lied. Oh, okay. I do have it. I got a tip in from my dad, and then we can get out of here, all right? All right, here we go. My dad said, I think that this is more about venting than it is a tip in. Keep in mind, my dad's a Cowboy fan. So let's go ahead and preface it with that.
We all need to vent.
Oh, man. Every fan has opinions and gripes about their favorite teams, but mine takes the cake. Being a Dallas Cowboy fan is at times the hardest thing in the world. I mean, we are the laughingstock of the NFL and everywhere else, to be specific. We all know blank runs downhill, and we're right at the bottom of the hill. This is hilarious. Every year, we think it's going to get better, but no. I mean, horrible contract negotiations, CD and Dak. Last-minute extensions, Dak, which I feel was a mistake and still do. That's funny. You know what? Before I move on, really quick, my dad and I had an argument prior to week one. And he was like, you know what? I think we could win with a competent quarterback. Give me Minshew. I said, before you do that, I said, you're telling me that you would take Minshew right now with what you guys have, and you'll send Dak to Vegas? He was like, if y'all willing to pay him. I said, talk to me at the end of the year.
Talk to me at the end of week 3.
Me and my dad talked at the end of week 9. And I was like, are you sure you still want to do this? And my dad was like, well, Dak's not playing. So honestly, maybe.
I would rather have Cooper Rush than Gardner Minshew.
Never mind. Trey Lance starting that week 18 game is all the reason in the world for me, if I'm Stephen Jones, to go in that building and be like, hey, Jerry, guess what? You see these? These are keys. These are keys. This is to the Dallas Cowboys. These are mine now.
Yeah.
All right. What was it? Last minute extensions, Dak, which I still, which I felt was a mistake, and I still do. Can't wait to see how we mess up Micah's extension. even if he wants to be a part of the circus, that was something that Markel Collins said last week. He said that there's a possibility, in his opinion, that maybe Micah doesn't fall into what CD fell into, doesn't fall into what Dak falls into. I think that's wrong. I think he ultimately signs that deal, but I do think it's interesting that it's a talking point. My dad said he says he wants to be a Cowboy, but we will probably mess that up. He said it just doesn't stop. After McCarthy's contract ended last Wednesday, instead of just letting him go, which would have been the best thing to do, I had just hoped that we would get rid of McCarthy and Dak at the same time. But anyway, why would Jerry want to take talks with McCarthy into next week just to do the inevitable anyway and let him go? The window has closed for us to talk to any of the coaches that are still in the playoffs, i.e. Ben Johnson. The only way to save faces for the Cowboys to make a stunning move, in my personal opinion, and is to get somebody like John Gruden, and he said Chucky, who is pissed off at the NFL and would love to get back at them by forcing Roger Goodell's hand to play, or excuse me, by forcing Roger Goodell to hand him the Vince Lombardi trophy. Or what about Coach Prime, who has already stated that he is too old school to deal with the NFL's with these NFL prima donnas? Whatever happens, I guess I will just have to get ready for another episode, or excuse me, for another soap opera season from them boys. Jesus take the wheel. When we were talking about UNLV and delusion, he said, "Talk about delusion. Wait till you read my tip in."
Hey, I mean, if Ben Johnson goes to the Raiders, what about Pete Carroll?
I don't think my dad gonna want Pete, but he gonna want
Pete?
But he might not want Pete because of age, but he wants Gruden.
I wouldn't hate Gruden. I don't think Dallas should ever do that.
You don't think Dallas would ever go get Gruden?
I think because of the whole lawsuit and the things that were in those emails, I don't know if that is something that the Dallas Cowboys of all brands are gonna ingratiate themselves with. Now they could, but John Gruden didn't leave the league in ceremonious fashion.
Guys, as we get ready to wrap up this show, I think Will is grossly underestimating who Jerry Jones is.
That's fair. That's actually very fair.
Until next time, gang. Keep on talking.
It's better reach hard.